Earth, the only known habitable planet to man. Its mysteries have expounded scientists for generations, and yet we have barely scratched the surface. As we have learned, there has never been a species that has affected the Earth quite like the human race. Now, whether you believe in some sort of almighty deity or a cosmic explanation to how our universe has come to be, there is in one fact that we may all agree on. We have lots, and I mean lots, of problems. From rising temperatures to terrorism to social collapse. There is one problem that stands out to me, and it's our current education system. More specifically, the pre-medical framework that many U.S. universities have employed, because in the words of my mother, if you're not can be doctor, you are can be loser. And obviously, if you're not a STEM major, you never really know the struggle. Here's how a typical pre-med student navigates through the ever-daunting pre-med track today. Most likely during your senior year of high school or your first year of college, you start thinking about what you would like to do with your meaningful and purposeful life. In your opinion, and your mother's of course, you can be anything you want to be because you are smart and different. You peruse different career options, but alas, you discover that your true calling is the noble field of medicine, where insurance companies reign supreme and the government can't figure out a way to become up to par with our European counterparts, who boast higher quality healthcare and lower expenditures. You very briefly explore what it takes to become a doctor and the interesting road ahead of you without truly delving into the rigorous, difficult, and at times painful life commitment you are about to take. You are feeling quite good about yourself now and decide to pursue a major in the sciences with biology at the forefront. Your first day of Bio 101 lecture was not quite what you expected. You arrive at the enormous lecture hall and find approximately 300 other students all looking excited and have looks of indignation, ready to start their way on their path to medicine. Because you arrived right on time, you find only seats available are those in the back of a packed lecture hall. But no problem, nothing can ruin this expositional moment. Class begins and you're ready to save lives, baby. The professor begins to outline the class and you soon realize this may be a little difficult with 3 exams worth 70% of your grade, homework that doesn't count towards your grade whatsoever, and upon listening to your professor for the first time, it has dawned upon you that she must have come from a people who predominantly walked the lands of Russia. Hey, don't let it get you down. Remember that these days spent in college are the best days of your life. A few alcohol-ridden weekends later, it's exam time. You spent the last few nights on a caffeine-driven rage, memorizing the every minute detail available to you through the book and lecture. Just to be sure you aren't missing anything, you shoot a text to a few classmates or potential friends, whatever way you want to look at it, to see if they want to meet up and study. This was done in vain, however. Your classmates are fueled by competition and see med school admissions at the horizon and are not concerned with your success, but their own. The day of the exam comes and goes. You check your score and you're not very happy. But why? You studied the main ideas and concepts presented in class, the learning objectives. You studied, right? You did the best you could, right? I guess not. The professor announces during the next class period that if you're unhappy with your score, you may need to adjust your study strategy or spend more time studying. Then, almost immediately, she begins covering the next few chapters, which will be on the second exam. Shaken by the speed and rigor and the broad class structure, you decide to go back home for a weekend to relax. Your parents are so excited with their child pursuing his dream of medicine, and they ask you what you've learned in class so far. You begin to open your mouth, but the words won't come out. And no, this isn't some Eminem reference. You're having a very hard time recalling what you've learned just 1 week earlier. Your loving mother gives you the motivational speech of the year by telling you it's going to be okay and you just have to roll with the punches and work harder. You go back to school and run into the same problems you experienced before. Toxic classmates who are driven by intense competition, hyper-focused classes that are not concerned with holistic concepts but the nitty-gritty details that you'll forget hours after the exam, and finally, a perpetual sadness and down that may lead to a darker path. If you don't decide to change your path soon, but continue majoring in biology, you will have very limited options in regard to your career. You try remaining optimistic and focusing on any way possible to raise your GPA, and I do mean any way necessary. With this poor experience under your belt, you're ready to adapt to the system set before you. But what if the system itself was what needed to change? What if the way these pre-med classes were being taught was the problem, and could be done better? Allow me to elucidate here. Picture this. You're a senior in high school, and you've demonstrated an interest in medicine. You are among a large pool of students now interested in medicine due to the recent influx of wannabe physicians and the high demand of physicians in the urban areas of the United States. Due to this trend within recent years, the American Association of Medical Colleges began collaborating with universities and through their joint effort designed the Physician Development Program, or PDP for short. This is a mandatory course taken in the summer after you graduate high school, required by all pre-med programs across the nation. This course not only details what to expect while pursuing medicine, but also involves medical school admission officers to ensure every step of your way is on the same page. The course also introduces the new major recommended for all pre-med students called healthcare, which allows students to fall back on the many positions within the field of medicine, not directly pertaining to patient care. The course is based upon participation only, and upon completion, you may then choose to become a pre-med student, or, when you have all the information presented before you, you may decide that medicine just isn't for you, which is totally okay, unless of course you come from a foreign family. In that case, good luck. Your first day of university is exciting, and when you get to your first class, Human Biology 100, you are immediately greeted by the professor and sit down in a classroom with small tables of 6 to 8 students. The professor hands out the syllabus and you read that the class is split between exams, projects, and written papers. Written papers? Projects? What the heck is going on here? You want to be a doctor, not an author, because where's the money in that? The professor begins to explain the importance of understanding the material in relation to the human body, and by conducting research and writing, in your own words of course, you'll be able to recall the material easily and even perform better on exams. The professor begins chapter 1, but you soon realize that she's sitting down at a table much like your own, assigning your first project, which is to work with your table mates or team, because she says physicians in the real world tend to work in teams, and discuss the roles of DNA, RNA, and the creation of proteins. Professor, you know what, let's just call her Susan. Susan encourages you to use diagrams, illustrations, and mnemonic devices to show the class your team understands the material. The team begins assigning roles, actively learning about each other and analyzing strengths and weaknesses to complete the project. The next class session, Susan won't be there. Instead, you are to meet with your teams and absorb the material so that next week when Susan comes, we can teach her the material and learn of any gaps within our explanations. Exam day comes, and you are confident in your mastery of the material. However, when you receive your grade, you're not very happy. What now? Well, Susan noticed your discomfort and meets with you after class to discuss how she may not only assist you in your understanding and learning of the material, but also make sure you're not overwhelmed, and may even refer you to speak to someone if you are feeling very stressed. After developing a scaffold to ensure you're prepared for the next exam, you and Susan check in with each other every so often, so you remain in control of your own understanding. Guess what? With this new strategy, you kill the next exam. Great job, you did it. But even after this success, you eventually decide being a physician isn't for you. But you still want to help people in the realm of medicine. Not to worry. With a major in healthcare, you are equipped with the skills necessary to perform the duties of other health-related careers such as therapy, healthcare education, pharmacy, among many others. I know what you're thinking. How are we able to accomplish all of this? Well, it did not happen overnight. Again, allow me to elucidate here. This all started in 2009 when the AAMC formed a group known as the Committee to Establish the Scientific Foundation for Future Physicians. Say that 5 times fast. To dissect the pre-medical curriculum and see if there was a chance to make it more practical. Just how Alexander Flexner did back in 1910. He's kind of like the king of medical reform. The committee included members from across the board, from undergraduate institutions to medical schools across the nation, to think collectively and solve the looming issues of the pre-med path. Things seemed to be looking up, and after years of deliberation, the committee drafted a proposal which they planned to present before Congress to finally take action. However, the 2010s weren't kind, and it was no time to introduce new reforms. Health complications and epidemics such as the Haitian earthquakes and fungal meningitis outbreaks and Ebola and even Zika virus were all running rampant, causing mass hysteria. The committee knew it had to place this project on hold until there was a moment, a critical junction, if you will, where the stars would align and an opportunity presents itself. Meanwhile, a collection of students from Wayne State University in the year 2019 began a petition concerned about the lack of professors and sections for important classes such as human physiology and biochemistry. Dr. Jack Sobel, the dean of the medical school at the time, tried introducing this petition to other undergraduate programs, but hey, More classes, more sections, and professors, that means more money from the universities, so it's safe to say that didn't quite work out. Fast forward to 2020, where tall, not so tan and handsome recent undergraduate student Christopher Mashrecki reads an article online called Reforming American Medical Education, which deeply resonates with how he was feeling about the ways pre-med classes were being taught, and how some of them were just utterly useless. Physics. He is so moved that he sends a very strongly worded email to Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, oncologist, bioethicist, and vice provost of global initiatives at the University of Pennsylvania, who is the author of said article. Moved by his concerns, Dr. Ezekiel, let's just call him Zeke, decides it's the time to make a change. Eager to rally some support from other physicians, Zeke presents a TED Talk, which went a little something like this. The way we are training our future physicians needs to change. Pre-med students are being bombarded with extremely difficult classes which in all honesty are irrelevant. We are focusing more on the specificities which hold no value in the life of a physician, while neglecting the core competencies needed to practice medicine. With depression and suicide ideation becoming increasingly common, it is time to take a look at alternative learning methods along with serious reconsideration in regard to the curriculum we are requiring our students to pursue. Other countries such as Germany who have integrated group learning and programs which include research, clinical rotations, and time to focus on studies without having to juggle 101 things like American students seemingly must. So, if I may speak for Zeke, eliminate ambiguous science requirements, provide students opportunities to become well-rounded members of society, and finally, introduce teaching methods that actually work. The talk blew up as more and more pre-med students began rallying behind their new idol. Physicians began responding to the call, and a movement was on the horizon. Remember that committee I mentioned earlier? Yeah, well, the committee's co-chair, Dr. Robert Alpern, let's just call him Bob, watched the TED Talk and took it as a God-given message to take on the behemoth of an issue once more. So Bob called up Zeke and was like, "Hey Zeke, hey Bob, what's good? Being pre-med kind of sucks. Lows, remember? Yeah, lows, totally lows. Ha 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 ha. Let's fix it. Alright, bet." And so, with the help of Bob's committee and years of collaboration, most notably from the team at Stanford studying pre-med dropout rates, the National Education Association, which provided research for group-based learning, the medical school headquarters providing research on medical school readiness, the College of New Jersey providing pre-med student mental health disparities, the AAMC, and finally, Harvard Medical School, which has conducted research in regard to improving funding for student success programs. The group was able to present a new proposal to Congress. Through the legislative process, of course. A quick Google search will tell you how that plays out. The proposal was called the Medical Education Reform Act, or MIRA for short. Under this act, the pre-med track would be transformed into a holistic, realistic, and plausible endeavor for those who were ready to serve others. The committee met with members of the House, mostly from the Democratic Party, to gain some traction. The bill was passed on to the Senate, where it received heavy opposition from the conservative right. However, with the increasing pressure of the public and persistence of the progressive minds within the review committee made of both House and Senate members, the bill was eventually passed by the President, Jaden Smith, who has always been a huge supporter of education. The bill required all undergraduate universities to adopt this new style of pre-med education by the following year, which went rather smoothly, save the administration at Ohio State University. But even the worst state in the U.S. was able to provide their students with a new framework where they may succeed in a healthier, more valuable, and more efficient way. And guess what? The next decade saw a new era of the pre-med student. With a more informed student population, the pre-med dropout rate diminished. Students felt their classes were worth it and actually attended class to learn, not memorize useless information for an exam. Depression rates were down, suicide ideation all but gone, and relationships between students and the professors became a contributor to success that previous eras did not have. I know what you're thinking, Chris, what about the competition of med school, Chris? What about it? By having the PDP program in place along with classes oriented around teamwork and group learning, competition was replaced by students truly looking out for each other and hoping the lessons they learned in undergrad support their success while working in teams in the future. The United States witnessed a new breed of physicians who were ready to serve and maintain the health of others. And everyone lived happily ever after. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for me. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.